Good afternoon. Yeah. Good afternoon. Good morning. Good evening. Good night. Whatever time it is for you, I hope you are well. I am sleepy, and it is 1:15 in the morning. I just haven't made one of these videos in a bit, and there was something that was really troubling me, and it feels incredibly serious. And I'm worried I'm not going to do a great job, but I hope and pray by God's grace that I can do a good job of it. But I don't think it's the kind of topic that is fixed in one conversation, in one thought, in one decision. Well, possibly one decision, but I don't know if you can really understand it on a deep level unless you take the time to think about it. And some of this maybe even has to be experienced. I don't know if I can say for sure whether or not you have to experience it or understand it from meditation, but meditation's a good route to go. It's less deadly and dangerous. This is on my mind because today, during a men's meeting at the Catholic church I go to, a man posed a question, somewhat of a statement, but it felt like a question. He said, "I need to know how to talk to my kids about pornography." And a room of 20 grown men, fathers, business owners, were visibly, I don't know if squeamish is the right word, but you didn't even have to look at each of them individually. The entire room just shifted. Just everyone just started moving a bit, and it was quiet for a few moments. And unfortunately, it didn't get answered. But for starters here, one of the issues is in a group of Catholics, that statement was made, and there wasn't a ready, prepared answer, and I didn't have one either. So I can't. Christ said when he was saving Mary Magdalene from being stoned to death, "He who is without sin cast the first stone." If you hear crinkling, I'm just loading up my tobacco. Help me warm my hands up a bit and maybe calm down a bit, because I'm frazzled right now for a variety of reasons. They were going to stone Mary Magdalene to death for the crime of prostitution, or the accusation of, maybe it wasn't even prostitution, maybe she was just sleeping around, and by Moses's law, I don't know if it's his written Torah law or the oral Torah law, you would be stoned to death for I'm thinking debauchery right now. It's not debauchery, it's sleeping around, polygamy. I'm missing a word. By law, you could be stoned to death. So Christ comes, draws a line in the sand, which is symbolic of Christ, or not Christ, God in Moses' time writing the 10 Commandments into stone with his hands. So it's metaphorically him saying, I don't know if they would have read into that this deep at the time, in the moment, but in a real sense, it's him saying, I write in stone with my finger, and that's kind of a claim to be God, and also him saying, yeah, let me slow down a bit here. So there was another law. If you yourself were guilty of, I'm missing that word again. If you had cheated on your wife, slept around, etc., if you had done that in the past, you could not accuse someone of the same crime or sin. Probably for reasons of being untrustworthy, but philosophically, it's a beautiful, I don't know if that's the right word. It's an interesting thought that you can't accuse someone, you can't cast a stone on someone for the same sin. So I can't point at anyone in anything I'm about to say and say you're wrong, it should have been this way, because there seems to be no easy answer to this topic, but I think the answer inevitably becomes God. Why is pornography a problem? Why, when we see a human declothe themselves, disrobe, expose their flesh, why does that become an event, a emotional, arousing event? Why is it even a topic of conversation? If we were simply animals, it would be irrelevant. There would be intercourse in the middle of the forest. No one would care. It would be the movement of nature. For some reason, we're the only animals that walk around with clothes on. And when we're not clothed, it becomes a thing. And I say this because I heard someone, I believe his name is Dennis Prager, he's Jewish. Articulate man, most likely more intelligent than me, potentially more wise. He's got many more years on me. And he made the statement, there's no atheistic argument against nudity. And he followed this up with that statement with another, a historical restatement of some city or something. A city wanted to make it legal for public nudity. Now, they had a conversation about this, as you would expect. Can we do this or not? They decided not to, but the reason they decided not to make it legal is for hygiene reasons, because they didn't want people sitting on public benches, etc., etc. Now, that's in some ways humorous and laughable that they came down to hygiene, because if we were to walk down the street and see a naked anyone, your first thought is not going to be that's unhygienic. It's going to be that's indecent. That is a fascinating fact that we need to sit and meditate on. Why is that indecent? Where does that internal moral certitude comes from? And I have never heard an atheistic argument saying, having any kind of solid pointing tos of where does that come from. They try real hard to say, well, because it's indecent. Well, you can't just say something's indecent. Where does that come from? So that alone, just what I've said so far, 9 minutes in, you can think about these things, just that, for quite a bit, and go back and forth logically, try to think on both sides of the table. But there's more to this. I'm gonna take a moment and light up here. I need to take a breather, because this topic is, I mean, I'm jittery because it's cold. It's 32 degrees. But I'm also, I mean, this topic, pornography, almost destroyed my life. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that for any reason other than to reinstate how serious this is. It is the most sacred, beautiful, potentially the most pleasurable thing humans do. And when you say the word sex, people get wiggly in their seats. They stiffen up. And if there is a devil, and I know by personal experience, even I know the devil's presence. He knows my name. He's annoyed with me right now. Before I started this video, he's the devil's a whole nother topic. But if there is, and I know there is, but for the logical progression, if there is a devil, I would want the most sacred creation of God to be hidden, distorted, tainted, twisted, and putrefied in filth. I would do everything in my power to destroy that. And the fact that even amongst the only real time you bring up sexuality and pornography outside of a sacred, the only time you bring up in conversation or visually or anything outside of a marriage union, a sacred, I'll get to that. Out and about in the world, when someone brings it up, it's laughed at, it's twisted, it's distorted, there's some sort of kink or taboo involved. And then when you think, when is it brought up and it's a beautiful thing and it's treated with respect? When there's childbirth, when you're potentially at the doctor's, then it's respected and understood on a beautiful level. And in marriage, and I'm going somewhere with this, in marriage, it's not necessarily spoken about. See, a wedding is out in the open, it's very public, tons of witnesses, hundreds, tons of people, potentially thousands know about it, about the event of the wedding, but 100 or more of your inner social circle witnesses, either in person or through just the grapevine of communication, that you and your spouse are coming together, and the assumption is that you're going to have a baby. Now, nowadays, that's not a clear assumption, but amongst people I like to associate with, a baby is sacred and a gift, and that's a whole nother topic, but it ties into this in a deep way. So I'm bringing out the marriage factor for a reason. Christ said we should be salt and light of the earth. Okay, so for light, what does light do? Light illuminates, exposes. It also, over time, bleaches and sanitizes. There could be a stain or some paint, and over time, the sun just removes that and leaves the purity of the material that is underneath whatever the sun just cooked away. Sometimes it can damage stuff, but it's usually stuff that's delicate and on its way out anyways. The stuff that's left behind, beautiful trees. I was going to say water, but water evaporates and does all kinds of crazy stuff. That's a whole nother philosophical philosophic and figurative rabbit hole. Water, stone, grass, dirt, earth, the beautiful, pure things that aren't tainted. You don't look at a flower and think it's impure, but when you look at a flower, you're looking at the genitalia of the plant. Now, no one ever, when I say that, just using the word genitalia, people get uncomfortable for understandable reasons, but that, I believe that's the work of the devil, because if Adam and Eve had not eaten of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, they would have been content being in the garden, running around barefoot, etc. But as soon as they ate that, they hid themselves, and they tried to cover themselves. So they tried to resist the light on them. They're hiding from the light. The light could no longer purify what was there. It could no longer illuminate and expose. And Christ also says we must be salt and light of the earth. Salt, historically, nowadays it's like a seasoning. But historically, salt was sometimes used as a currency. You would smother meat like pork, etc. And salt, to preserve it, it had to be covered either in a salty water brine, which is kind of figuratively a baptism now that I think about it, but just immersed in salt, little grains of pure sanitizing salt. Salt's bizarre. Salt disinfects. It can burn, just like the sun can burn, but it purifies and it preserves. So when we're talking about pornography, sex, genitalia, and these sacred things that are the most exposed and delicate part of our being, and it's not just our body, it's our soul, it's our heart, and beyond our heart into our soul, and beyond our mind into something deeper that is non-tangible, that you cannot. Okay, I said I was gonna light this up like 10 minutes ago. Part of me is uncomfortable making this video because I don't want to do harm where there's already been so much harm done. But this feels so serious because people's lives are at stake in such a real way. And some of you listening, you may know me personally. You may just be a random person on YouTube. You know personally that distortion and manipulation of this topic, what we're talking about right now, has been the end of lives. It's led to the intentional ending of lives, individual levels, and on a widespread level. It's just torn families apart. It's broken hearts so deeply that they never heal properly ever again. This is a topic so serious, it cannot be hidden. You cannot cover it with fig leaves like Adam and Eve tried. You have to show yourself to God. You have to, obviously we're not going to walk out the house with our clothes off and say, I am exposing it. I'm no longer making it taboo. You can't do that nowadays because we have fallen human nature. It's indecent. Back to the beginning where I was talking. But we need to allow the light to purify and clean it, and to see what the problem is. You have to illuminate it so you can meditate on it, understand it, respect it, and then maybe not then, but maybe before, maybe a little bit of both. It needs to be protected diligently with pure salt. Another thing Christ said after this, after saying we must be salt and light on the earth, is that adulterated salt that has been mixed with sand loses its savor and is only fit to be trodden underfoot. That is a terrifying statement when we put it in context of what we're talking about. If your method of protecting your deepest part of yourself becomes adulterated and tainted, he says it is only fit to be trodden underfoot. There's a variety of different places I can go with the conversation right now. What I'm thinking about right now is my upbringing and the upbringing I see other people go through now. I remember once I went to traditional Catholic school. We were reading the Constitution of the United States. Something pretty much everyone that I'm friends with has respect for, assuming they understand it. Some people even say it's a divinely inspired document. Now, I don't think I've met Catholics that say that, but I believe, if I may be incorrect, but I believe the Mormons generally hold it as a divinely inspired document. We were reading the Constitution and we got to, I don't know, section 12 or something, 13, I don't know. And it states that pornographic materials, you have a right to own them, possess them, potentially create them. I don't remember the fine wording. But we were taking turns reading sentences, etc. through the class with a priest in the room. We came to that section. The boy reading, I believe he was one of my friends right next to me, started stuttering. He came to the word pornography in the Constitution, didn't know how to proceed. Oh, I don't think I can say that out loud in class. The priest, who I won't name, because I can't throw stones in the situation. I cannot blame him in this situation. He said, just go past it. Because if you were to, you would think the church is exactly where you need to have this conversation, because it in the end leads to God, to the sacred, to the holy. But parents, for understanding reasons, that's why this situation gets so murky, would potentially lose their mind if they knew that their teachers were going through this stuff in a way that they weren't supervising or weren't understanding of what the conversation was. And then on the other hand, in public schools, you hear the horror stories of literature and whatever else being distributed that is so vivid and detailed and demented that these kids, these poor innocent children, come out at a young age completely confused, completely distorted. They've taken this sacred, holy thing that's deeper in us than I was going to say music, potentially music, and it's right there with love, and they twist it. That to me is the most diabolical thing I can think of. Diabolic, the word diabolic comes from a Greek word, two Greek words, I believe, dia and balein, which means to tear apart, to tear asunder, to create discord and disharmony. That is to take the sacred, a marriage, intercourse, brotherly love, charity, a community, a whole country, a whole planet, and to just twist it and shred it. That creates a tear, that creates a scar. It's the essence of evil. God brings together what God has brought together. Let no man cast asunder, let no man tear apart. And that's pretty plain English to me. And when he says, let no man tear asunder, he's in a real sense saying, let no man bring the diabolic, take the place of Satan himself. Christ said to Peter, get thee behind me, Satan. He called the future first pope Satan. That's a little hard to wrap your head around, but not if you think that there's the context of what the situation was when he said that. But if you apply that to other situations, can you take the place of the devil and do his job for him? Absolutely. That's his preferred method, because then he doesn't have to make himself aware. All right, make us aware of his presence. Fortunately, he has to play by God's rules. So his presence generally has hints, and generally you have an inkling. So back to upbringing. So for light to purify something, expose it, and to clean it, to make it white, to remove the imperfections on the surface, it takes time. It takes potentially years in the sun. So this is not a topic that I feel can just overnight, you can come to a sensing of it and an understanding. For me, it took a decade. It wasn't a decade of trying. It was more like a decade of trying not to think about this stuff. And my conscience, my inner moral certitude just boiled up and said, you have to make a decision. You cannot keep doing violence against my own conscience. When you violate your own conscience, you do violence to yourself. That's the diabolical. That is the tearing apart. That is being diabolical to yourself in the true sense of the word. I don't know how to overstate that more. You are intentionally taking a part of your psyche and your soul and saying no. It's choosing hell. I met a lady with my brother in a Walmart recently, and for no apparent reason we start talking about God, which is one of those conversations that when it happens, it's fascinating thinking when it was happening. It's like, there's a reason this conversation is happening. But anyway, she believed everyone goes to heaven. She had a rough life, man. She had some stuff going on, but you know, I whether or not you have faith or a belief in heaven and hell as an extraterrestrial after we die location, I take it on faith, but I don't know with certitude, because that's past death. I don't know. I take it on faith, but I can't wrap my head around what heaven or hell is going to be. But I can see it here on earth for sure. I have been on the precipice of the black hole of human consumption and hedonism with my feet in the swamp, and I almost fell in, and I would have not gotten out, and it would have torn my family apart, myself, and I may not be sitting in front of you if I went to that precipice. So people, without a doubt, choose hell, and they also, without a doubt, choose heaven. Now, heaven kind of feels like that harder to reach thing. Like, it's, for me at least, generally speaking, it's so easy to see the negative, the evil, the twisted, but that's because most people are not in the practice of gratitude. And I don't necessarily think I practiced it, I think it was just the natural alternative to hell is gratitude just falls into place when you go the other direction. Heaven and hell is real. I've already done a video on that. We're 30 minutes in. I didn't load this well enough, and I haven't even been puffing on it, but let's take a breather for a moment here. I didn't write anything before having this conversation. It was just boiling up inside me, and when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about this all day after this conversation with a group of men, group of fathers, group of soon-to-be fathers even. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, this is an entire book. And for some reason, I felt like I had to get this. I had to expel it from my mouth and just try to like get it out, because it was just too much going on. This is too serious a topic, too dangerous, too sacred, too beautiful to leave adulterated and unaddressed. I feel it's hard in some real sense to find anything more sacred than this. I don't pretend to have a correct answer for the upbringing dilemma of who should be having this conversation. It's commonly assumed it's the parents, but that we say it's commonly assumed, but it's not, because people expect the teachers of the public schools to do it. They expect the priests to do it. They expect the nuns to do it. They expect possibly grandpa, grandma. I don't know. Everyone's got a different plan for how this is going to work out. But when I grew up, there didn't seem to be a plan, and I'm not throwing stones. It's just the devil has just wormed his way through this so interconnectedly that it's just, you feel wrong saying these words. You feel wrong saying pornography, sex, intercourse, but we don't feel wrong saying marriage. That's a beautiful thing right there. It's in the light, it's exposed, it's a beautiful communal witnessing of the beginning of something that will soon become a family with children. This ties back into, let me just continue, with children. So you have a wedding. Not everyone has a wedding, I understand. Then a child comes. 2 months ago, 2 months and a day, had my first son. I have 2 girls and a son. Looking at them is like, I'm gonna ash and reload here. Looking at children is like looking at flowers. They're sacred, they're pure, no malice, nothing in them that's despicable. This the purest thing on earth. And eventually that pure child grows to be an adult and starts, before they're even adult. My oldest daughter is almost 8, and she's already asked some of these questions. Not pornography. Well, She hasn't asked about pornography, but she's asked about babies, even things like strippers. Why would it be wrong for her to be a stripper? Which is, you hear that question, and a religious person will revolt from that. Why would a child even say that? Well, you know what? The world has a way of working its way into everyone's mind, and they hear things and they see dancing women and they go, I want to be a pretty dancing woman, because the child sees it as a beautiful, pure thing. They don't understand what's going on yet, but it ties back into why is it indecent to be unclothed? Because there's dignity in humans that is not placed there by us. We do not create our own values. That sounds like a crazy thing to say. Listen to Jordan Peterson. I don't know a specific video where he talks about this. I've heard multiple videos where he's talking about this. But we don't create our own values. That's a hard thing to even explain, but that it ties back into why is it indecent for you to be out in public in a certain manner. If you take a belief in God out of the equation, then we're just animals, and it's not a big deal. But it is, and we know it. We can pretend it's not, but we know it's a deal. We know there's something there. The babies grow to children, children grow to adults, the adults have children. But the adults are really just children raising children, and they're trying to figure it out too. And it's difficult. In many ways it's difficult, but in many ways it's so simple. Most things are like that, beautifully simple, but so impressively complicated. These beautiful children grow to be adults who sometimes choose to abandon their dignity and to participate in hedonism, pornography, whatever you're thinking of that comes to mind. That's what I'm talking about. They participate it at the expense of their dignity, which is there intrinsically. It was there to begin with. See, people say, when I was growing up, and pretty much everyone I met, even your average person on the street, knows pornography is bad, knows indecency is bad, knows that having who knows how many partners, who knows how high of a body count, they know that's a problem, but they can't really articulate why it's a problem, which is why in the men's group, the statement and the question that was posed, how do I talk to my children about pornography? There wasn't a prepared answer, because it takes time under light and preservation protected in salt to keep things pure, and to just understand that it's simple, but if you're an adult and you're trying to be logical and have an answer for each step of the process that eventually leads to God, eventually leads to a dignity that was there intrinsically that we did not place there, values that we did not place in ourselves that just happened to be universal, even with their fluctuations. If you go in the Amazon forest, it's going to be a different atmosphere, but they're on the same page with a lot of this stuff. They just have a different style about it because they're more adjusted to different things. I was always told it's wrong. I never had a sit down I didn't even have the sit down of, here's how things work. I would ask a specific question and get somewhat specific answers, but I didn't get the big picture from a physical aspect. But for sure, at least to my memory, maybe I just wasn't paying attention, or maybe it was one conversation or one sentence or 3 sentences in my childhood that I didn't absorb, because it's so much to absorb. I'm 40 minutes into this, and I feel like I've barely touched the surface of this, and by God's grace, this will land on good soil in your soul. These seeds that I'm hopefully planting are hopefully good. It needs to be talked about in the light. Why is it a problem? Why does it just so happen to end up destroying lives? Just coincidentally. Pornography is what I'm speaking about specifically right now. And it's not just pornography, it's hedonism, multiple partners outside of wedlock. It's thinking that humans are objects for your pleasure. And when you objectify humans outside of your circle long enough, eventually you look at yourself in the mirror and you start to think maybe you're just an object. You know deep down it's wrong, but you start to think maybe it's true that I'm just meat. And that comes back to the diabolical. That will tear your soul apart if you don't sit in that and let the light in and try to sanitize and clean this and protect what needs protecting, but illuminate what needs illuminating. What do we need to look at here? And that conversation can be uncomfortable, really complicated, really difficult, and I think for most probably 100% for sure, I'm going to say, I could be wrong, but I think this conversation needs to be had once for the first time, and again and again and again. I have to do it to myself again and again and again, because the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And my spirit is weak too, because of objectifying those around me so long that I start to look at myself as an object, and now I'm backpedaling, and I feel like I've made a lot of progress, but the more progress I make, the more I realize how behind I am in some things, because the light is illuminating the problems and the damage that tearing, that beginning of the tearing has done. Those scars, there's most of them are permanent. And if you can protect that sacredness, that purity of children, while allowing the light in, while allowing the understanding, the conversations to happen, the meditation to happen in a safe way, then you're preserving with the salt and allowing the light in. Then you are the salt and light of the world. You can't be salt and light if you aren't going towards the darkness, and you aren't going towards something that either needs cleaned or needs preserved. The light is useless if there's no dark. The salt is useless if everything's already salty and pure. And if I continue this that line of thinking, for there first to be a crime, there has to be a law. For there first to be light, there has to be dark. Or for there first to be a shadow, there has to be light. For the first to be a devil, there must be a God. For the first to be a war, there must be peace. It's 2 a.m. now for me, I have work in the morning. I would have been working later, but I felt like I needed to get off for some reason, and maybe this video is why. I'm gonna stay on the video for a little bit longer, see if something comes to mind, because there's a lot of stuff that was just troubling me in a good way, because I felt like these things need talked about. They have to be talked about. If a word causes a room of 20 full-grown men to shift in their seats, that word needs to be understood. Why is it doing that? You need to bring that to light. In Catholic theological writings, for understandable reasons, I've read and heard that Scripture says that you must flee from certain sins, specifically impurity and these sins of the flesh that we're talking about. For understandable reasons, you have to flee from them because they're so dangerous, because what they're damaging is so sacred. Yes, we need to flee from them, but we also need to shine light on them and purify those things with salt. We're not being salt and light of the world if we're not proactively trying to fix the thing that needs running from. You can only run so long before you have to turn around and fight. I tried running. One book I was reading even said that, I'm paraphrasing, but most moral dilemmas can be worked through with prayer and reading and meditation. But the thing I was reading, I can't remember the book, said specifically when it comes to purity and physicality and intercourse, sex, etc., that it's best to work with a counselor, a guide, a priest, specifically a nun is best. Maybe it's your father, your mother, someone who is in a position where they themselves are in a safe position to help you combat this, so that instead of running your whole life, you have the articulation behind your moral certitude to know that not everything needs run from, because it can affect you if you understand the forces behind it. Because you may be running from something that really is something pure and sacred, like something that leads to children. And that needs to be done. It needs to be protected, that process that leads to a family. Because that's all we have is family. That's it. Some things for sure you need to run from, and you just need to stay away from them. But you need to understand why you're running away from them. It's not enough to just run every time someone says pornography. If every time that word comes up, you say, don't say that, we're not talking about that, that is not healthy. Just saying it's bad is not at all a good answer. It's a start, But you better quickly follow that statement up with, here's why that's bad. And don't just do that in one conversation. Even if you're talking to an adult, if it's someone you care about, don't just assume they know, because maybe no one had that conversation with them. No one had it with me. In some sense, I did have the conversation with other people through videos, hopefully like this one, where someone cared enough about the sacredness of this topic, this issue, to articulate these issues. Because I had a serious problem with these issues, and it would have been the end of me. And I reached the point where I needed to not, I needed to choose. I chose to run away and to understand these issues as best I could. And when I was looking at these videos on this topic, I don't remember finding a single video that didn't eventually lead to God. Whether or not they said it, almost all of them said it. But even the ones that didn't got into spirituality really quick. So weird coincidence, huh? Jordan Peterson has a video with, I think his name, Tim Ballard, the guy that the film Sound of Freedom is based on. He interviewed Tim Ballard and, I can't remember his name, the guy who plays Jesus Christ in The Passion of Christ, the film that came out a bit ago. I can't remember his name right now. Jordan Peterson began explaining to them how people get to the position of being in those seemingly unimaginable depths of human depravity, that you would become a pedophile, a human trafficker, whatever. It's through thousands of micro progressions in solitude. So what does that mean? So that, for a visual, that's the person who goes into the basement in the dark on their computer, and thousands and thousands and thousands of times goes a little bit farther because they get bored with the old stuff. They go farther and farther into the black hole of human depravity, and they find themselves in a place that to some people is unimaginable. But if you know yourself and you understand your shadow self, as Jordan Peterson would talk about it, and Nietzsche and some of those older psychiatrists or philosophers, they understand that I think a good person understands that they're capable of falling to those depths, and they understand why it's so important to articulate these issues and be on the right side of them. So you're 10,000 micro progressions in, you find yourself there. How do you get out? You start by thinking about what I've been speaking about for 54 minutes. You start by thinking about, why is this tearing my soul apart? Why does part of me want it, and the other part of me is so disgusted with myself? Why do I have a fallen human nature? And how do I get out of this? Not only can I not cast stones at people and judge them, I also can't say that I'm any example of purity. But I'm clawing my way out, and for me, I make no apologies for the continuation of this discussion. You may just be a random person on YouTube who's just run into a wall, and is good for you for getting 56 minutes in thinking about what I'm talking about, whether or not I'm doing it well. You're thinking about this and absorbing it in your language. And if you're not a Catholic, you don't believe in God, I don't know where you are. For me, it was the Blessed Virgin Mary. It wasn't immediately her or Christ. It was me realizing I cannot go that direction. I need to choose. I could go that direction, but I don't want it. I need to choose. And part of the way of clawing myself out, and whether or not you fall into the level of a pedophile, a human trafficker, maybe you're just right on the surface of the filth, so to speak. You're just getting your toes into the swamp. It's like the Princess and the Pea. You may be in a palace and there's just that one thing bugging you, or you may be right in the swamp and everything is on you. Wherever you are in that journey, you need to think about these issues and then decide to move progressively in the right direction. Consistent energy in the right direction will yield the results. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time under the light and protecting things that need protected with the salt. And I was listening to people speak on these issues, and I knew I needed, this is another thing we were talking about today amongst the men. I needed fellowship. I needed to be in a gym. I needed it, or around men who go fight and box and wrestle and then go home and be peaceful with their family. I needed to be around something, even if they're not perfect people. I needed to be around people, men of strength and character, and women of chastity and true beauty. I needed to be around the light and around the salt, because I needed cleaning, and I did not want to go to church at all. Part of me was like, maybe church, but I didn't want to be around crazy people. I didn't want to put on a facade of going through the motions of something that I don't understand, don't believe, don't have faith in. I didn't want to play pretend, because I don't want to tear myself apart. I want to be one person acting where I am at the time, which has been a struggle my whole life, where I would have these different me's, where in this environment I'm this person, in this environment I'm putting on a facade, this environment I'm just a monster. I needed to just be one person, even if that person was just lousy. I needed it to be one, and then I needed to move that person in the right direction. So as I'm trying to think about these things, meditate on them, and think of, where am I going to find these people? I don't know if I have the time to be in a fight club. I don't know if I can financially handle an injury if I get injured or whatever. I don't know where the best quality people are going to be. And while that's going on, I had a still small voice. It was a thought that did not feel like mine. Told me to make a visit. Wasn't even it was just make a visit. And I knew what the place they were talking about. It was my church. My traditional Catholic church. And for some reason, I was at peace with that. And I had never even really, I didn't want to think about, oh, I could just make a visit. Like, that didn't seem productive. Why would I do that? Just go sit in a room. Logically, that didn't mean anything. But for some reason, it didn't feel like my thought. It was palpable. And I went, sat, saw someone I hadn't seen in a long time, someone whose marriage fell apart for these very things we're talking about right now. Almost every person I went to school with, I don't know everyone's details of the marriage that I went to school with, but everyone's marriage that I do know some details of, they all have an issue with this. This diabolic infestation, this cancer has seeped into every marriage that I know a little bit about. They've all had issues with this. Because these conversations don't happen because they're difficult. Had a short conversation with the priest. I sat in the church, left, smoked my tobacco, spoke with the priest for a little bit. Nothing specific. He asked if he could do anything for me. I told him I couldn't think of anything at the moment. That was it. A week or two later, I believe it was May 12th, 9:15 in the morning. I was on a break, smoke break. That same thought that didn't feel like mine, that same still small voice. In the Bible, they call it the still small voice. That makes it sound weak. It's a solid voice. You know it when you hear it. Told me to say Hail Mary. And why would I do that? Why? Hadn't said one for a decade, potentially. Wasn't sure if I'd remember it. I probably didn't remember it at the time, so I Googled it. That was my first thing. Okay, I'll just Google it. The first word, Hail Mary, I shuddered. My whole body just reacted. 3 or 4 words in, I'm crying. I am not a proud crier. I am embarrassed to say in front of a video that I cried after saying 3 words. That makes no sense. That's not nostalgia. Nostalgia for a paragraph? I get nostalgia for video games and songs that I love. Songs that were part of my childhood. I hear them and I feel nostalgia. Songs that bring back smells and images. Never cried over a song. Music is deeply important to me, and that's never happened. That paragraph broke me. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Why would that break me? Thank you, God, for everything. And I'm so sorry for everything.